you for letting me tell my little story. I received my wake-up call in 2014 when my husband David cheerfully told me one day near the end of the summer, hey, Green Mountain Power's going to come by and upgrade our electrical meter. Okay, great. I knew nothing about this. And so what followed were many sleepless nights, and it was more than not being able to sleep. It was as if inside of me this buzzing was happening. It was the most bizarre sensation I've ever had. I kept thinking, am I drinking too much coffee? I don't really drink that much coffee. I tried giving up coffee for a while, and it wasn't that. And so I'm exhausted and sleep deprived and not knowing what is going on, and I never imagined it could be something like that. Well, I was leaving for Germany in just a little while after that, so it was a short amount of time. And so I go to Germany, and it was a 7-week position that I had for work. So I'm in Germany, and after I get over the jet lag and everything, I'm sleeping just fine. And I noticed that, hey, I'm finally getting a good night's sleep. This is great, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, well, that's just sort of strange. You know, why was that happening? So, of course, you know, I like to look into things, and I Google and symptoms, and you end up with people chatting about something, and I started going, oh. And I say to my husband, what was that thing they put on the house? Oh, it was this. And so he goes out and takes a picture of it. I start putting it together, and apparently at that time in Germany there were no smart meters. Sadly, I've learned that they have started installing them, but in 2014 there were no smart meters. And I thought, well, I wonder if that was it. So we go home. That night I'm buzzing away. I'm trying to sleep, and I'm like, that buzzing thing is again. And I said, okay, that's it. We've got to do something about this. Now, my husband David works for VLCT, so he's very up on legislative issues, which is very handy. He said, well, I did, you know, I checked it out, and we can opt out. And I said, we're opting out. And he said, no, come on, it can't be that. How could that little thing make you feel? I feel fine. I mean, you know. And so I said, we're opting out because you love me, and we were going to do this anyway. So he calls them up, he sets it up, they come by, they take it out, and I've had great sleep ever since. So that woke me up, and thank you.
Hi, I'm a soccer coach, and I teach Tai Chi and mindfulness, and I'm not an anti-tech nut, but I am a bit of a health nut. I've had Lyme disease a long time, and I noticed that my wireless router was keeping me up at night, so I'd shut it off and I'd sleep fine. A similar kind of a wake up. And then I moved to a space that didn't have a wireless router. It had a weak signal that I could use for, you know, sending good phone calls, and I decided I needed a stronger wireless router, so I bought one a couple of months ago. I plugged it in, and I know I'm just one person that has this reaction, but I am a person. And it made my chest hurt, and it made my head just feel funny, just buzzing funny. So I still have bad phone service, but I just can't keep that thing plugged in. It's just not worth it to me.
In 1997, I sustained a brain injury from 8 hours of brain surgery. At the time, I mean, I was a step up from a vegetable. I couldn't see, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, but obviously over time I've gotten much better. What I was left with, and I had no electrosensitivity that I was aware of. Following the injury, I still slurred, I still stumbled once in a while, I still have a little bit of double vision, and sometimes some mind fog. So anyway, when I moved into my trailer in 2016, suddenly things started to deteriorate. You know, stumbling more, my speech was worse. I mean, it was really obvious, and I said, what the hell was going on? I found out that 10 feet from my bedroom was a bank of 5 smart meters. And so I immediately moved my bed as far away from them as I could, and that helped. And then in the spring, another trailer became available, and I moved in. So that took care of that.
My name's Judith Person. I have a registered nurse, active registered nurse license from Pennsylvania. I worked for the post office for 24 years. We moved to Vermont in 2011. I guess everybody's realizing now what hypersensitivity is, and I developed that in 2014. I don't know why. I just started getting hit, just like somebody hit me with a drill in the left side of the temple, right, I mean, the left side of the forehead right here. Night after night, Jim was about scared half to death because we didn't know what was happening. And then Christmas morning, 2014, I was getting company, and I got up very early to put the turkey in the roast. And I got zapped. It's just like somebody was there and actually zapped you right there. And then within just a couple minutes, the power went out. So that was a pretty good indication. So we have our house all wired with fiber optic and for phone and internet. We had to change our home security system. So Jim's a good computer guy, and the fiber optic is perfect. We have no problem, no problem. So what happens to me with EMF is I can't travel anymore. I can't stay in motels. I have to find some little rustic place out in the middle of nowhere. It's changed our lives. And I get excruciating pain that is cumulative and doesn't go away until I'm hours away from it. So when this 24/7's up, I'm finished. But I'm concerned about the kids. I'm really concerned about the kids and the babies, and I could go on and on, but I think I'm done.
I also am a nurse. I work as an RN. I'm currently employed by Springfield Hospital per diem. And I'm very concerned about 5G. I have my own personal experience, which started I'm not going to get into my personal experience, but I will say that I did discover that I too have some EMF sensitivity, and it really concerns me. And one of the things that concerns me, that's been on the back of my mind as each person speaks, and being here in this room where there are so few legislators, that when one has the experience of EMF sensitivity, when other people around you don't have that experience, they often are going to discredit you, and they're going to look at you as though you're someone with a tinfoil hat. And my credibility as a science-based person, as an RN, is really important to me. But one of the other things that I understand, and I really appreciate all the research that's been done, and I particularly appreciate the fact that you took steps so that we in Vermont are able to opt out of the smart meters.
It wasn't just.
No, I understand, but you were.
Yeah,
part
we
of
saw
that.
trouble coming. I said to my staff person,
Right.
go to every committee where they're bringing it up, and by the 5th or 6th committee, the lobbyists for the utilities came and talked to him. That still only resulted in a $10 fee. Then other people, including Tina, who's here, helped to work together to get the opt-out and
Right.
have it retroactive. And I will say, we thank Tony Klein for that. Representative Tony Klein is the one who actually did this in legislation, and we are very
So
lucky.
we need to do the same thing with 5G. And one of the arguments that I hear from people is concern about the economics. People are concerned that Vermont has to move into the 21st century, that we have to have widely available broadband. I'm a major tech person. I love tech. And fiber optic is the way to go. 5G doesn't make any sense. But from a health perspective, I want to tell you something. There's a program in Vermont called 3-4-50. And 3-4-50, probably none of you have heard of it. It's being implemented with medical providers. And what it refers to is that there are 3 behaviors that affect 4 conditions that are responsible for more than 50% of the deaths in the state of Vermont. The 3 behavior, and I would say that we would want to add this RF radiation to that because it affects these conditions. The 4 conditions, I will tell you, that are directly affected by this radiation are, they are diabetes, they are cancer, heart disease, and lung disease. Actually, all of them are affected by this 5G radiation. And I want to speak just a little more personally to this question of diabetes. Now, in addition to being an RN, I'm also trained and certified as a holistic health coach. Like, I don't remember your name, who spoke, who teaches mindfulness and does Tai Chi. I have those same interests as well, and I teach mindfulness and I teach Qigong. Anyway, I'm a healthy person, I'm very concerned about my diet, I don't have any family history of diabetes, and yet I find myself being pre-diabetic. I find that my blood sugars are not where they should be. Now, I foolishly have been late to the game in terms of getting the wireless out of my house. I've only within the last couple of months switched to wired internet. But my blood sugars are not where they ought to be. I mean, I'm not diabetic yet, and I'm taking steps, but I hike every day, I'm out in nature, I make sure to get barefoot on the ground, I have a dog, I mean, I'm in good shape. And somehow I'm being affected by this diabetes. The rates of diabetes in our country and in our state are going through the roof. We have little children who are being diagnosed with diabetes. And it's not just a question of inactivity and they're eating junk food. There's something else that's affecting it. I haven't looked at the timelines, but I would bet you that this increase in diabetes is going to be shown to correlate very much with the rollout of this wireless radiation that we're all being exposed to. So I sure hope that we will all be contacting the legislators who are not in this room so that we can make sure that we take steps to prevent this rollout. Thank you.
I'm not very good at ad-libbing, so I'm going to read a prepared statement. I live in Walden, Vermont, and I'm here to express my opposition to the 5G network and to speak out about the impact that 5G will have on the health of all of us here in Vermont. I am one of a growing number of people worldwide with a disability called electromagnetic sensitivity, a condition that I have suffered from for more than 15 years. The chronic symptoms I have struggled with over the years, including headaches, dizziness, tinnitus, nosebleeds, and vision problems, are caused by exposure to the radio frequency radiation emitted by wireless devices, machines, and equipment commonly found in home and office environments. There is very little public awareness and a great deal of ignorance, including in the mainstream medical community, about the effects of wireless technology on human health. However, a considerable amount of international scientific research shows adverse biological effects from wireless radiation, including heart palpitations, headaches, skin rashes, damage to DNA, impaired concentration, decreased problem-solving capacity, etc.
So I came across, I wish I had the written reference to offer to you, but there was testimony by an MD who had done her own extensive research in medical libraries about this issue of the 5G, and she was testifying in front of another state legislator about her concerns. And one of the things that she named is that when they are going to do research on diabetes with rats, the way they make the rats diabetic is by exposing them to RF radiation. It is that reliable. They can make all of them diabetic by and she said it's not long-term and it's not a lot. But they make them diabetic in order to do experiments on diabetes by exposing them to RF radiation. And it has been, there are plenty of studies that link increases in blood sugar to this RF radiation exposure.
So there hasn't been any public discussion whatsoever on the health and environmental effects of 5G radiation. This is quite a mystery since there are thousands of peer-reviewed studies clearly indicating the harmful effects of most levels of human-generated radiation. A 1996 FCC prohibition on public discussion of health effects related to telecom technology is simply not appropriate or acceptable in the age of 4G and 5G. I work with people who have been poisoned by pharmaceutical and other chemicals and have become extremely hypersensitive, not only to all chemicals, but also electromagnetic fields. Many people have these sensitivities, whether from exposure to various chemicals or just from intense exposure to EMFs, as we've heard again and again today. Many people who are currently suffering from electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome aren't even aware of where their illnesses are coming from. It's hard to sort out in a world that has already become saturated with ubiquitous radiation from so many wireless sources. These people have been having these often debilitating effects from 4G radiation. 5G wireless radiation is by orders of magnitude greater than 4G. Yet, apparently, no studies are known to have been done by the government or telecom industry on effects to human health and the environment. Why is that? It seems to me that if there ever was a time to invoke and follow the precautionary principle, now is the time. Rather than fast-tracking deployment of 5G, legislators should heed the demand of several hundred scientists around the world who are calling for a moratorium on 5G development. The case for such a moratorium is clear and strong. It just needs to be looked at by decision makers. And this is a question to any decision makers. How much do each of you really know about the health outcomes of this technology? Unless you've read a lot of the science coming from independent sources, or at least about the science coming from independent sources, away from the empty reassurances from an industry that seeks only profits, it behooves you to help put a stop to the fast tracking of this dangerous technology in Vermont.
My name is James Minnick, and I reside in Bethel, Vermont. I have a bachelor's degree in political science with extensive studies in government administration. For 35 years, I worked as a software engineer for Unisys, which was previously Univac, and small computer service companies. I wrote thousands of lines of computer code for numerous telecommunications applications and operating systems. I developed, installed, and supported network communications systems at NSA, the White House, the U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, and the intelligence community. I helped design and develop the communications network for the National Broadcasting Company in New York. During all these years of working on these systems, I experienced the exponential growth of network technology and increased bandwidth of communication services. However, none of those technologies were as hazardous as those associated with 5G networking. 5G networks have been found to be extremely dangerous and lethal. There is sufficient evidence being compiled around the country and throughout the world to warn us about the severity of implementing this technology, most of which is non-essential. But we are compelled to protect the lives of those in our community and family. Implementing 5G networking does nothing to improve people's health, nor does it improve our thinking processes, nor standards of living. We must free ourselves from the slavery being inflicted upon us by high-tech villains who have no regard for our health and well-being, but are merely concerned with lining their pockets with our money. I, for one, am totally fed up. I don't know whether you can tell that or not.
You can tell now.
But I, for one, got more to go yet.
I know you.
I know. I'm still on a period. And then it's downhill slide.
Enjoy yourself.
Yet our government waltzes merrily along, paying no heed to the disaster that looms before them as they cluelessly embrace the demonic pronouncements being offered up by overzealous communications companies. It's up to the people in Vermont. Right, call and buttonhole your rep. That's an old expression, by the way. It's for no other reason than for your kids' sake, if nothing else. Oh, and by the way, health insurance companies will not pay for damages incurred to health issues resulting from radiation of 5G signals.
Damn.
Limits must be included in our legislation which is passed, which permits the installation of high-speed networks. In particular, networks must not be allowed to exceed 6 gigahertz, above 6 gigahertz, so I'll get all that out, which causes severe harm to human life. That is important. They're going to get, if this bill is going through, we have to make sure, and the senators that are processing this bill right now have got to make sure that there are limits installed. They cannot just move along with this thing. Studies by many European countries have concluded that 5G is extremely harmful. What am I telling you is merely the tip of the iceberg regarding the dangers of 5G signals. Please read and take to heart what is being reported concerning the severe health risks associated with that technology. You have a responsibility to protect Vermont citizens from an overzealous industry that has little or no regard for human safety, but is only interested in the enormous profits these technologies will reap for their stockholders. You have a responsibility to challenge the federal laws that have been passed which prevent the discussion of health issues when determining the permissions to be granted for the installation of perilous technologies in our communities. Vermonters used to stand up and fight against overly aggressive companies, but now it seems they just want to roll over and let organizations like ALEC dictate how they should legislate. And oh yes, the fear of lawsuits. Oh, the fear of lawsuits, the trembling of these legislators. Oh, we might get a lawsuit. The fear of lawsuits, which seems to haunt all of our legislators when it comes to doing something right for the state. Come on, I don't think Ethan Allen was worrying about a lawsuit when he and the Green Mountain Boys kicked the Goodlums from New York out of our state. Get some grit and do something good for all Vermont citizens.
For 25 years, I lived with my family on a beautiful hillside in Vermont. In Vermont, we have a lot to be grateful for with our proximity to the beauty and serenity of nature. Our lives strangely changed about 10 years ago when a small wireless network company installed a cell tower on the roof of a neighbor's home to provide internet service from the top of our hill to the valley below. At the time, the two of us still living there started experiencing unusual things. When I went out to my gardens, I started getting headaches and sometimes felt so dizzy that I had to lay flat on the ground. I started having sleep disturbances. I had rarely had headaches in my life, and I was getting them all the time. We later figured out that the radio waves traveling right through our property from our neighbor's roof were causing these health issues, and we learned we were having symptoms of electrosensitivity. Yes, this is a real biological reaction to an environment that has been altered by man-made electromagnetic radiation. Other living beings on the hillside were affected. Our two puppies experienced leg twitchings in certain parts of the yard, and radio wave radiation measurements using a gigahertz solutions RF meter in those locations were found to be higher than evidence-based research showed to be safe. I discovered at various times stunned birds taking shelter on our porch, more protected from the assault of the waves. The deer who used to feed on our land traveled further down the road, out of harm's way. Bees, which had been plentiful on this hillside, disappeared once the cell tower went up. Some trees on our land were even affected. We reported the situation to town officials who did not take us seriously. The neighbor with the cell tower on his roof was not at all sympathetic because he was receiving free internet service from the company for hosting the power. We learned that the Telecommunications Act of 1996 gave wireless companies the legal right to install such towers without regulation because health concerns were not legally considered, nor was testing required. After about 2 years of health issues and discomfort, we sold our sheriff's home to escape from the electromagnetic assault. I now live in the valley where I carefully consider my exposure to electrosmog. My home is hardwired only for the internet, landline phone, and television. Thanks to the wisdom of the Vermont legislature and others, I have been able to opt out of having a smart meter placed on my house. I still get occasional headaches when I am near someone's iPad, wireless laptop, GPS, or cell phone. I'm here today because if 5G technologies are installed in Vermont, unlike with smart meters, no one will be able to opt out of being exposed to the significant increase in radio wave frequencies. the health and environmental impacts would be far more serious than what I have experienced, according to internationally renowned scientists that you've heard about today. I'm asking that the Vermont legislature listen to the experts who understand the science behind emerging wireless technologies and laws that might, in fact, be detrimental to the health and well-being of us all. Some of these experts and their research include the US National Toxicology Program, the BioInitiative 2012 report by independent scientists, Physicians for Safe Technology, the Environmental Health Trust, the European Scientific Committee on Health, Environmental, and Emerging Risks, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. I have enclosed a 2-page report from the Environmental Health Trust on what you need to know about 5G, wireless, and small cells with my testimony. Thank you for your time and the work you do on behalf of Vermont citizens.
I got a job at DHMZ as a medical transcriptionist. And during that time, they were installing basically Wi-Fi into the system. During that time in 2005, I moved to a cabin, which is my style of living. I don't like to be around a lot of people, around a lot of electricity, gadgets. I'm a researcher, I'm a writer. I love the internet for its freedom of information, which is closing down. Okay, so when I moved to this place, I was a quarter mile from a cell tower that had been put up the year before. And the landowner got, like, I don't know, maybe $30,000 to put this cell tower up. 2 weeks into living in this cabin, I experienced a heavy brain fog and physical. All I can say is I felt like an amoeba. I could barely crawl down the steps from my ladder in the loft to go to the bathroom or to go outside, to feed myself, to do anything. This lasted for 2 weeks.
I'd like to thank all the speakers.
Thank you.
And everyone who came, and some people drove 3 hours to be here.
Even longer.
And it's really great to see you all here today and connecting with each other as well and hearing each other's stories. This is all a matter of public record now. It's been videotaped, and you also can submit your statements that you spoke, and if you didn't get a chance to speak here, you can still submit your written statement, and it will be a matter of public record for Bill H513, and we just encourage you to stay in touch with us and to watch your email for any updates. Is there anything else that we should cover before we go?
I understand you do the EMF testing?
She does.
Yes, I do.
She
Yes.
did my house. She did a great
Mine
job.
too.
All right.
I highly recommend this job.
Thank
Do
you.
you have cards with you?
I do, yes, and it's EMF Sweep. You can find me online at emfsweep.com.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.